This episode is brought to you by Leo Bato and Associates, ang realtor na patok.
Visit abaeservices.com for fast medical transcription service. This podcast episode is brought to you by AB Music Creative.
This career that you have, was the Emmy Award, was that you have, was that more of like a validation, a defining moment? Where does that fit into this career journey?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was validation for sure, because I'd done, at that point, by the time I got nominated, it was 17 years in the business. So I was going through kind of a period of time where I was like, it's 17 years already in the business and I haven't gotten to this level. Yeah, well, you're just like, I wanted to be I was transitioning from what my old job, which was production supervisor, which was it's a top level job, but I wanted to be more creative. I wanted to do more stuff. And so I was in a transition period, and for that to happen while I was doing that and for producing was very like, oh wow, this is amazing. So it was very validating. But I have so many moments kind of like that in my career where I'm just like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. I shouldn't be doing this. Like
I like when you say I shouldn't be doing, that's a version of imposter syndrome that comes in, right?
Oh, for sure. Well, just kind of like, the way I think about it, for example, I got to work in Walt Disney World for 2 years on some Christmas specials, and growing up the way I grew up, kind of like lower middle class, we got to go to Disneyland, but I was never going to go to Disney World. Like we family is not going. We're not going for a trip out to Orlando. It wasn't an option. So when, for example, I got this job to work on that show, in I think it was 2016, it was like, they're paying me to go out there. And so it was a very kind of like full circle moment where I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so I've had a lot of those sort of moments where it was something from my childhood where, for example, I grew up watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. Yeah. Big fan of Star Trek. My dad put me on it when I was a little kid, and I was working on that show for the Academy, the SciTech Awards.
Yes.
And I got to book Patrick Stewart as our host. So,
wow.
So for me, as somebody who watched him on Star Trek: Next Generation and then eventually X-Men and all that, to be able to say, oh, I did a show where I said, hey, I want this guy as the host, and we book him as the host, and then I get to sit this close to him, and I'm saying, oh, Sir Patrick, and he's like, call me Patrick. And I'm like, okay. And for me, it's one of those things where I'm like, like the imposter syndrome of like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like the people who, come from where I come from are not supposed to be here. And visually, that's what you see too, because like when I'm on set, I'm still one of the only Filipino people you'll see on a set, So I'm constantly kind of in that sort of mind frame, but at the same time, like I get to experience these really cool things, and I'm just like, oh, cool. So yeah, winning an Emmy, getting to work with, my heroes, getting to fly to places that I never would have been able to fly to before. Right. So those are the things that like, I get validation, but I'm also just constantly like, this is my dream job, and I love it.
How does it feel that when you say you're one of the few Filipinos in your department or in your space, then you see all these Filipinos coming up in cinema and in music? How does that make you feel?
I mean, now it's great. I mean, it's one of those things where back in the day, we didn't have that. We didn't have anything to look to on the screen that resembled us. It was either you had to look at either shows like The Cosby Show. For me, it was like, oh, that's the only show I could look at where it's like these people look different. Or you would see people like, I'm a big pro wrestling fan, so I used to see Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I'm like, oh, he looks like me,
Yeah.
And so of course Bruce Lee and any sort of Asian martial arts stuff, you're instinctually like, oh, like they look like me, but for the longest time, that wasn't the case. And even up until like the last decade, it still wasn't the case. We only had Rob Schneider. We only had Apple App, Nicole Scherzinger. And then in the last decade or so, it started blowing up. Oh, Darren Criss, Vanessa Hudgens, Olivia Rodrigo, just more and more and more.
Do you think there's a glass ceiling
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's just like, you know, Pandora's box is open now, you know, and,
nice.
and I think you're starting to see, oh, like look at our people and the talents they have. You know, we could do it all if we're given the opportunity, right? And so now it's happening, and I'm loving it. You know, I love seeing Bruno Mars out there. I love seeing anybody who'll rep the flag. You know, it does. You don't have to be born there. You don't have to be, you know, as long as you're willing to say, yeah, you know, this is part of me, and I'll rep it. So I love that. I love seeing it happen. Batista,
Right.
you know, so many more. I love it. So that's something that in the last couple of years, it's been really exciting to see. So I'm all for it.